Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television is sponsored by Nutrien. Nutrien, feeding the future.
Hello everyone and welcome to Perspective, a public service of Florida Gateway College Television. I'm Mike McKee. Also like to welcome the listeners to the program this morning from WQHL and WCJX. My guest on the program is Billy Atkins. She is a regional director for community hospice and palliative care. We're going to find out all about community hospice and palliative care when we come back. Don't go away.
50 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. Billy Atkins is a nurse, but she's also regional director for community hospice and palliative care. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
I want to ask you, community hospice. You hear the word hospice. For the viewers and listeners who may not be familiar with what a hospice does, can you give a little background on what a hospice is all about?
Absolutely. So hospice focus, a lot of people think that hospice is about death and dying, and truly it's about living your best life and focusing on what your goals of care are in the face of a terminal illness. So really everyone has access to hospice care when they've been given a terminal diagnosis, and it allows people to state their goals, to be at home with their families if that's what they want to do. It's about comfort and compassion and getting the support that they need.
Now, it's normally a bad time. I mean, when you learn a diagnosis is terminal, it's not a happy time. But so hospice kind of helps that. I mean, it seems like there would be a little bit of consoling as well through what hospice is all about.
Sure. Well, what we do is provide emotional support, spiritual support, physical symptom support for families, and it's a very intimate time in someone's life that they allow us to come in so that they can remain at home, walking them through that journey. Are there things that they want to accomplish, weddings, proms, their children's graduations, grandchildren. So really focusing on what's important to them and making that possible.
Now, there's another hospice in town. You guys are a regional hospice. Tell me the difference between the two.
Yeah, you have a hospice here in Lake City already. We originated in the Jacksonville area in 1979. We're a nonprofit, very mission-based. In fact, our CEO is a social worker, and she worked with us back before she even got paid when it was volunteering. So we applied for the certificate of need. The state basically said that this area was underserved by over 500 patients, and in that application process we were awarded to come into the area based on our service in our original territory. So we serve about 1,300 patients daily, and are excited to bring our expertise into this area and really focus on the families.
Now you come into the home. Is that how it works? Tell me how it works. There's not a facility that someone would go to. It's more home care, correct?
A lot of people think hospice is a place. I don't want to go to hospice, and truly more than 80% of our patients are at home.
Now is that the patient chooses that, right?
Absolutely.
It's big. Would you say that almost 100% of patients who are dying don't want to go away from their home?
Not 100. Some people prefer not to pass away in their home for whatever reason. Probably about 2 to 3% need a hospice inpatient unit, and we have those available in our original territory, and we will be bringing those to this new territory as well. But for the most part, we're able to keep folks in their home where they want to be, surrounded by their loved ones, their pets in the bed.
Yeah, it seems like it would be more comfortable being in a familiar setting at home. Now, what type of things do? You mentioned that palliative care is a big part of that, and that's what making someone comfortable.
So it's interesting. Hospice is palliative care, but not all palliative care is hospice. And we at Community Hospice and Palliative Care offer both services. So patients who have an advanced illness who need symptom management, and to start those discussions with their families of, what if plan A doesn't go well, we need to talk about plan B. So we do have those services.
Now, is a local physician part of that equation, or explain how that happens, how that works?
We have two medical directors that are running this area, Dr. Bobby Lafferty and Dr. DeLeon, and we're very blessed to have their expertise in symptom management. But we work in partner with the patient's specialists and family doctors as well.
Now, typically, someone comes to the house. Talk about how that works. I've been diagnosed with a terminal illness, and it's toward the end. Mm-hmm. Does a nurse come to the house? How does that work?
So I'm an old hospice nurse.
How long have you been doing it?
I became a hospice nurse in 2004. So
it takes a spot, and I'm just going to tell you, from what I've seen in any hospice that I've been to or talked about, it takes a special person to deal with someone at the end of their life, because that's basically pretty much all you do.
It takes a special person to be a school teacher too. So,
well, that's true. That's true.
It's a privilege. It truly is a privilege. So what we offer the patients and families in their home is a nurse who is kind of that quarterback guiding that care, who accesses the social worker and the chaplain, which are vital in the needs of the patient and family, as well as the physician, nurse practitioner. So we embrace our families in their homes. There's no more running to the emergency room or different doctors. We're able to actually bring the care to them, their medicines, their equipment, and it's about living and less on poking and prodding.
What would surprise people to know in that quarterbacking situation? Because again, nobody goes through it the same way. Yeah. I mean, and situations are differently, but what would people be surprised to know that your quarterback, your nurse who's kind of taking charge of the situation, would have to know to do, or would have to help arrange or help do?
So we anticipate symptoms. We understand disease progression, so we have emergency items in place. We're able to go to the patient in the middle of the night. The nurse is able to anticipate symptoms to prevent them. And that level of expertise in the hospice specialty is so important to the success of having quality of life. And they're able to pull in the expertise of the social worker and chaplain for spiritual pain and psychosocial pain. And, does mama, is she going to know how to pump gas if dad did that for all these years? Or who's going to, we need to get those things tucked in. And having access to those specialties within the team. So even though the nurse may be the quarterback, the team is what we bring to the patient.
Well, and I'll give an example. A loved one may have kept the books at the house, may have kept the checkbook, and may have done investments. Is that part of what you're talking about, that you kind of need to prepare for that if this person passes? And
there may be a sense of panic even of how am I going to do this. So we don't come in and solve all the problems, but we really sit down with families and help them develop a plan. Let's start having these conversations. We foresee that these might be some needs in the future, and what plans do you have to deal with that, or what resources can we plug them into so that they're able to cope, so that after the passing of their loved one, they're not only grieving, but they've got a sense of, okay, I have a plan in place.
Well, when you say plan, the last thing that someone who's going through end of life with a loved one thinks about is being prepared. You're more. Would you say that it's more emotional that the patient and the loved one is going through, and there's really not all that time to think about planning?
the focus, you're so busy going to the doctor a lot of times that once you get to this part of the journey, you're still in that thought process. So really helping them to see what's important. And one thing a patient told me a long time ago, which was so profound, is he said, everyone's sad because they're going to lose me. And he looked at me and he said, they don't realize I'm losing all of them. And so it really gave us a place to plug in the chaplain and the family and acknowledge his own grief.
Now, when you mention chaplain being involved in this, is that a big part of coping with this? I mean, having a spiritual, I guess, something to hang on to, is how does that work?
Absolutely. Our chaplains are multi-talented. It's truly helping folks work through spiritual pain. Are there issues they need to resolve? Are there questions that they have about their own faith? And how do we help them work through those things so there's not distress when the time is near?
Now, this, again, it's not a known science. End of life is different for almost everyone. What about time? Because I think the biggest question, how much time do I have? Is that a question that gets asked a lot?
All the time. We don't have a crystal ball, but what we do know in our area of specialty is, there are certain ways diseases progress, and a lot of times your past decline is a good predictor of your future decline. And people like a number, like days or months, or I passed my 6-month mark. And truly, you need to focus on what's important and what you want to accomplish. It's better to be realistic, to say hours to days, days to weeks, weeks to months, than to give a patient a number that they get so fixated on.
Right, and then there's kind of an expectation too if you put a number on it, and again, it may not be an accurate number.
Right.
When you talk about going to visit someone in the house, and you talk about a pet or you talk about a family member, how important is it for hospice to the family members that are dealing with this? I mean, one thing, you have to deal with someone who is passing on and what their issues are going to be, which includes pain and getting what they call affairs in order. But talk about a child who's losing a parent.
Absolutely, whether adult or minor. So the family unit is just as important as the patient. We don't take care of just patients, we take care of families. In fact, in our first year, we've taken care of over 165 families in the new area. But embracing them, we have child life specialists that can help with the minor children. We also have grief counselors and bereavement camps for the children, Camp Healing Powers. But really helping the children to work through and support them with their own loss and their own needs. How do I help mom? A lot of times the patient will say, don't tell her how sick I am, and then the daughter will say, don't tell her how sick she is. So really getting them in a room to sit down so that they can have quality conversation and closure and even cry together, but come to a peace about where they are in this.
Now, is there a cost associated with hospice care? I know that nurses have to be paid and things like that. So talk about that if you would.
So hospice is paid for through Medicare or private insurance, and we also have a large philanthropic area that allows us to help anyone who is unable to pay. So Ronald Reagan signed into law the Medicare Act, which everyone under Medicare that has a terminal illness of 6 months or less, and there's that number, if a disease progressed in the way that we expected that it would. So there's no reason that anyone who should need this service couldn't access it.
We're talking with Billy Atkins. She is the Regional Director for Community Hospice and Palliative Care. We'll continue our conversation and talk about some veterans care when we come back. Don't go away. You're watching Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television.
Planning the right amount of food is hard. The Guestimator makes it easy. Just tell it who's coming and what's for dinner. Then it tells you how much to make. And yes, it even plans for leftovers. Try it at SaveTheFood.com.
Welcome back to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television, and we'd like again to welcome the listeners to WQHL, the Big 98, and WCJX, the X, for listening to our program today. Billy Atkins is a Regional Director for Community Hospice and Palliative Care. You've given us a lot of good information. We mentioned children in the last segment, but we didn't mention children that are dying. How tough is that? I mean, and that's something that you deal with and you have to deal with.
We do. So when I first came into hospice, I expected I would be helping with elderly patients, and I was shocked at how many younger patients we had. We're all born to die, so it was quite eye-opening. We actually at Community Hospice and Palliative Care have an exclusive pediatric care program in the original territory, so we deal with children with advanced illness and also terminal illness.
How a challenge, there's a different challenge though, isn't it? I mean, I'm not saying, I say no death is easy to take. At the end of life, someone's in their 80s or 90s or even hundreds, it's expected, but it's very difficult for a child who has gotten a diagnosis. Talk about that challenge.
So again, we take that focus back to living, whether it's having Christmas in July or engaging our children in events with the Jaguars. And we've been lucky enough to have so many people within the community embrace our pediatric division. And so really walking that family through how do we live every day and make sure that they feel well enough to enjoy every day. There are good and bad days, but we try to make more good than bad.
What are some things that, again, a viewer or listener wouldn't think? You mentioned Christmas in July. I mean, that's always a happy time for children. And if they know they're not going to make it past that time, what are some other things, like maybe horseback riding or doing something fun or?
Whatever it is for that family, whether it's an event, a Disney trip, just really helping that family to say, let's make this time count. What is it for that child that's special? Who do we need to engage to give them good memories? And we also do very healing things, not just with children, but with adults. Memory making, whether it's thumbprints or art or things that will be left to commemorate the love of the child or the person.
And those are some things that, I mean, a parent, obviously when you take a photograph, that's your memory, but doing something like that, I don't think many people would think that, you know, little Johnny did this before he passed on, and now you have a keepsake forever and ever.
Absolutely. You know, you never realize how important pictures are until that's all you have left, and I realized that in losing my own mother. It is so important to make it count. One time I had a patient, and the wife was so intent on the medicines and the regimen and the care, and I looked at her and I said, when I leave today, I want you to lay beside him. Put the bed rail down and lay beside him, and just like you have for 30 years. And months later, I ran into her in the grocery store, and she said, that was the best day. She said, it never crossed my mind. So our nurses helping families to refocus on the value of time and little memories that are really the big ones.
Well, and again, when you're going through this end-of-life situation, you don't think about stuff like this. And when you're talking about hospice and the men and women who deal with it on a daily basis, they've seen a lot, and their experience is something that is very beneficial to individuals. Now, we wanted to talk about veterans' end of life, because veterans, I don't think there's a hospice within the VA that I'm aware of, or is there?
They have a very robust program at the VA, very fortunate, a lot of palliative care experts there, and they work with us in the community when their veterans come home and with other hospices to provide that care.
Well, I tell you what, we're going to take a look at the services offered through community hospice and palliative care as it refers to veterans in our community. Let's take a look at that video. We'll be right back.
We got the referral, and we were just starting out in the area. So when we found out that he wanted to pass away at home. So when we hear that, we always want to see how we can help them to have those goals met. During that process is when I found out that he was a veteran in the Marine Corps, and then I knew about our program. I contacted Billy to kind of get the ball going, because it being a new area, you have to find out which avenue to take to, get the pin and the certificate and the flag, which I had seen presented to other patients. And so they had an idea and seen if we could get part of this new program where a veteran could actually go out and present it to him.
I received an urgent message from Billy. Our very first patient in our new service area was a veteran, and she wanted to honor his service. So I knew the right guy for the mission, and I reached out immediately to a former coworker and a personal friend of mine. He's also a combat wounded Army veteran. In his job, Andrew oversees the care of 14,000 wounded veterans and their families in the state of Florida. In his personal life, he's a dad, he's a husband, he's also donated his bone marrow twice to complete strangers. And last year, he even donated one of his kidneys to a fellow veteran who was also a complete stranger. He has top secret clearance and is on the first name basis with several presidents, but you never know it. He's the most humble, servant-hearted person I've ever met.
So I received the text message, just kind of waiting on details, right, of where the veteran lived, the time that was best for everybody. I just happened to be driving back from the Panhandle of Florida, and they said, "Hey, can you be there tomorrow at 9 o'clock?" And I said, "Sure." And it was my first time doing something like this, so I wanted to be prepared, make sure everything was up to standard. And then we went in and spoke with Mr. Tyer's wife for a little bit, and just kind of let her know where I was coming from. Being a veteran myself, and the opportunity that I had to honor her husband. A lot of people could look at it as I gave him a pin, I gave him his Marine Corps flag, a certificate. I talked with his wife, but as a veteran to another veteran, it was an honor for me, to honor him, to honor his family.
Being a veteran and being a Marine, and he, I know, was so honored that day as the family when they presented the plaque and the pin and the flag.
I reassured her, that he was very proud of his service. I've never met a Marine that wasn't proud. And I think her reaction, and hopefully it brought a little bit of closure, for her as well.
I think that was the first time we actually saw you cry.
Yes.
Finally,
Yes.
it's just some closure.
It brought tears to our eyes. Yes, it did.
And I think you took a picture off the wall that had been there forever.
Yes.
To hang his plaque.
Yes. And the pin and the flag that they presented was just touching.
And after a long journey, Edgel actually passed away that evening.
Yes.
I really think it was kind of a release, a moment, or what he needed maybe to feel that presence of another soldier.
A lot of veterans have a lot of pride in their service. A lot of veterans, when they get older, or they've been out of the military for a little bit, I want to say we're necessarily forgetting about them, but they're not always thanked, right? I know what it's like to be in their shoes.
I know several folks that are younger veterans dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. So this is healing for them to to look to the future and to see that death can be different than what they might have experienced. So it can be healing for them as well as the family.
After I had received notice that Andrew had sent an email to say mission complete, those nurses are angels, and he was honored. And that meant the world to me, that he thought that about us, because I think that about him.
Coming into Columbia County and the new areas that we are now in, there's a large veteran population, and I think it's so important to know who our patients are and to know what their needs are, and by honoring that one special thing for you and him is a privilege, and it's something that every veteran deserves, and we hope to do more of that.
I think all of the veterans deserve that at the end. Yes.
Lisa, our patient's nurse, is the wife of an Army veteran, and several of her family members have served our great nation. She shared this story of her veteran patient with her husband, and he was moved to tears and incredibly proud of his wife. As an Army wife to a soldier who served 30 years and 18 days, I'm incredibly proud of our Veterans Program.
Again, thanks for sharing that as well. Is there anything about the Veterans Care that we haven't seen in the video, or that you wanted to add to?
I think veterans have a unique need, and they've seen things within their lives that may manifest closer to the end of life. So it's so important that our social worker are so valuable, and the chaplain to help work through some of that so that they have a peaceful passing. Post-traumatic stress disorder is very real, and our soldiers, whether male, female, it doesn't matter, tend to be very stoic. So our nurses and physicians need to be and are trained to identify pain when they may be denying pain, because pain could be considered a sign of weakness in the veteran population. But we help them understand that where their disease is and that it is real, and patients that feel better tend to live longer and a better quality of life. So helping them understand that so that they're able to get the care that they need.
All right, we're going to take our last break here on Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. When we'll come back, we'll give you all the information you need about how you can support community hospice and palliative care, as well as volunteer opportunities that may be available for you. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Mosquitoes will bite day and night, so protect yourself with these tips. Keep mosquitoes outside by shutting doors and covering windows with screens. Use EPA-approved insect repellents anytime you're outdoors. Cover your skin with long sleeves and pants. Mosquitoes lay their eggs in water. Just a bottle cap of water is all they need. So drain, refresh, or cover anything around buildings that can hold water at least weekly, and put away outside items that aren't being used. A message from the Florida Department of Health.
Sometimes if you don't have the cash to help out hospice, that maybe your time is worth even more.
Absolutely. We have about 1,000 volunteers are in need of volunteers in this area. Younger veterans to help with our pinning services for our veterans, or office help, or even just visits with patients and families, reading a book, running an errand. So if you're interested in that, please contact us at communityhospice.com. It is the most rewarding thing you'll probably ever do.
I think we've got a telephone number if you'd like. The office is located at 163 Southwest Stonegate Terrace, Suite 105. The number is 361-2199. Again, and I kind of believe that those who volunteer have probably gone through a hospice experience and feel it's important that they help others.
Some have lost loved ones, and others haven't. We even have teens who volunteer for their college hours. So they're learning and experiencing what hospice is. If you have lost a loved one, we prefer, there's a waiting period to allow you to work through your grief before we engage you to volunteer, but certainly reach out. There are patient services that you can volunteer in, as well as administrative office type things if you don't want to engage a family. So there are a lot of different opportunities around, or even to go out and speak about what hospice is.
All right, well, thank you for being on the program. Wish you the best of luck, and you're doing a great service to those at the end of life, and we thank you for watching and listening to Perspective on Florida Gateway College Television. Until next time, I'm Mike McKee. So long.